Here's a quick overview of the Thunderbird kit and how it'll be packaged. The wing and tail carbon, as well as the material, the fabric, will be in here. It's already laid out as marked. All you have to do is cut it out. The Blendrum tape and the Dacron tape. There's enough tape to put together the wing and tail. Also in here we have the servo mount for the rudder servo, and a couple of adapters and the tail parts. The backbone is already bolted in place. The flex plates are bolted in place. The model is completely together, although it is recommended that you disassemble it to glue all of the bearing pockets. You leave the bearing in place and glue around it. The flange bearings, you'll actually press those back away so that you can get some CA underneath the flanges, and then of course push the plate back down on the bearing before the CA hardens. I use thin CA, and I've shared a tip about using wire to control the amount of CA. Just dip the wire into the bottle and then you can pinpoint where you want the CA to be. Also, the shoulders or the ferrules, they're already together, and the curved section goes to the top. If we look at a mocked up frame here that has those shoulders mounted to it, all the frames actually get put together into this stage before I take them apart and put them in the package. You can see the shoulders are mounted with the socket heads forward. Note that the small spacer goes on the front here. At the shoulder where it attaches to the frame, there's a small spacer. On the back side there's a large spacer. Those spacers are actually on here already, so you're going to take out this bolt and put this spacer in the front, which will go through the bearing, this spacer to the rear, and that's what you have here. As far as the flex plate, the way it mounts, take off the nut and take off one washer. Slide all the way through, put the one washer back on, and then put on the nut, and that will secure the flex plate to the shoulder. You have the tail assembly, which has the two screws to mount the servos. One of them has a nut, the other one does not. The nut is more of a jam nut because it will thread into, it's already threaded into the servo plate. So mount your servo and then you can go ahead and mount the plate just like you see it. The bolts are provided already. This bolt here, which is at the rear, is already in the frame. So simply take off the nut and slide the servo mount onto the frame, and then put the nut back on. That's the pivot point. The adjustable link, which you see there, it is already mounted to the frame. Just loosen this nut here, take this and slide it over, and put the bolt back in. You can see that here. One tip, there is a spacer inside of the servo mount. Make sure that that spacer is in there. So if you take a look, you can see the nut is on the back side, then the frame, then one side of the servo mount, then a spacer, and then the other side of the servo mount, and then the head of the socket head screw. So that's how you go about putting the tail together, as well as reinstalling the shoulders. And again, disassemble the gearbox so that you can get to the bearings. Also, the other places you're going to be gluing is you're going to remove the backbone because it's going to be attaching to your wing, and the double-sided tape is already on, so you just peel this off and stick it in place. But you're going to glue this mount here with CA on both sides, top and bottom, and you're going to glue the rear mount both sides, top and bottom, and you'll glue that after you remove the backbone. Generally, whenever I mount the battery, my battery is always mounted on the left side of the model, and as a rule, my battery mounts between this point and this point at the front of the battery. So in other words, my battery would stick up here in this area right here. And then I also use a low voltage cutoff, and that low voltage cutoff is generally mounted right here. So I take and have a strip of Velcro that goes from this point here all the way back to about halfway into the notches for the servo mount for the elevator. But my model doesn't use an elevator servo, but I did leave in the provisions so that you could mount one if you decided to do so. But I highly recommend that you fly the model as it was designed to fly, and I think you'll find it very enjoyable.